Perfect. All right. I'm going to start sharing over here, and I'll definitely keep an eye on the chat if you guys have any specific questions. But today I was going to kind of just show you guys kind of the basics, basically how to start a template that you have and the 3 different ways to do that. And then we can jump into also, just any other specifics you have about questions or adding in fields or things like that. So let me go ahead and jump in here. Awesome. So we're going to come up in here and we're basically going to start a new template. There's 3 different ways you can do this in case you haven't done this before. You can either start from blank, which is pretty self-explanatory. This is going to be like starting a blank Word document, if you will. So there's nothing going to be on there, nothing formatted. It's a completely blank document. The next one is starting from existing. This is really great once you've already built out some base templates in your FVDA org. You can come in here and say if there was something, maybe you're building out some more court proceedings and they're going to have a very similar formatting compared to something else that you're doing. You can come in here and, select your complaint here and start from existing. Something else that this is good for is, different letters, maybe it's like an LOR or different things like that. It's always going to be up there to the insurance typically, and then you're going to have like the reply line and body of the paragraph. So you can go ahead and start from there. I was going to show you guys just how to start one of those existing ones. So we can come through here, select existing. The next part is you would basically select the template that you want to create. Let's go down here. Let's say we just want to do maybe this medical authorization form because we know it has some similar formatting that we want to use. We can select that. We would basically give this a title. I'm just going to call this delete, but you can name it whatever you want. But I just need to know to go back and delete this later. So you would give that a title, and then you can also opt to actually keep the clauses linked to this existing template if you want. Basically, that's going to make everything on the template uneditable, but you can unlink stuff once you actually make it. This is really good if there's, certain things like, I don't know, clauses or captions or things that you don't want to have to go back and edit later. You can just keep them linked to your existing template, and they'll kind of transfer over all of the information and the formatting. So if we come in here, you can also give it a description. It's optional. I will note that you can only see this on the back end when you're actually in Outlaw, not in working in FVDA from the Filevine side. But that's something else that you can add there. You would just then hit create template. And then you can see it basically just made a copy of that template that I already have and inserted it here. And now I could go through and basically just connect this to whatever section in Filevine that I plan to be working out of. And then I can do my additional formatting because maybe instead of, keeping this body paragraph, maybe I'm always going to be sending it to this provider, like in these 3 sections. So I want to keep these, but maybe like delete this one or something like that. So you have the ability to come in there and edit those. I'm going to pause there for any questions on the existing template type, but if not, then we'll just keep moving along. Cool. All right. So the last one that you can actually start from a new template is the upload. So the great thing about upload is you can either upload a .vine or a docx. I think this month, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm remembering that wrong, Jasmine, but I think this month that Outlaw is also kind of pushing out some beta features that we're going to be able to work with maybe more Microsoft related formatting so that when you upload a document, you don't have to reformat as much. I know that release is coming, but it hasn't been pushed through just yet. So hopefully there'll be some updates on that. But the next one here is basically upload. So you would just find, a docx that you have or a .vine. A .vine is actually any of these that are actually in your Outlaw already. So, this clause library, you can come over here and you can download as a .vine. Obviously, if you're working in your template already, you probably don't need to download a .vine and then re-upload it because it's already here. But, if you are friends with other firms or working with another firm, or maybe even Filevine has sent you, I don't know, maybe an exported template that they have, you would just be able to come in here if it's a .vine and you can upload it there. So that one's pretty straightforward as well, but we can go ahead now and maybe just jump into some more of the coding out and how to add in different fields. So I'll kind of pause there in case anybody else has any questions. Cool. All right. Let's go ahead and just jump into this delete one that we made together using the existing template. Now, something to note when you are setting up new templates in FVDA is that you will have to go through and connect each one, even if it is made from an existing one, back to your Filevine. This is basically just connecting it back, giving it a point of reference so it knows where to pull in your Filevine information from. If you don't do this step, you can see that even though I did make this a copy, and we can see that these grayed out fields are basically our connected Filevine fields. They are grayed out and they're not teal, which means that they're not going to pull in any data. And you're also not going to be able to see this template back in FVDA, so back on the Filevine side. So we just want to make sure that as we come in here to manage this, we want to go over to the little gear. I'll walk that back one more time to this little gear over here in the top right. We'd want to click on that, and then we'd want to make sure we navigate over to connections and then set up your connection. Now for this part, you want to make sure that you're connecting it to the correct section or correct template in your Filevine. Obviously, you can see here, we have a lot of them. This is our sandbox, but I'm sure you don't have this many, but you would just want to choose basically which project template in Filevine you want to connect this to. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect this down to ours here for our testing purposes. And then you also want to basically connect this to this section. Now, compared to FVDA and DocGens, right? FVDA is going to be able to pull in from all of your sections, whether it's static or collection sections, even multiple collection sections at the same time, compared to DocGens, where you're just pulling in, you can pull in all the static information, but you typically can't pull in from more than one collection section, right? So this actually isn't locking down where you're going to be able to pull in information from. This is just asking you to determine where exactly you want that widget in your Filevine to live. So, you can have it live in any of your customizable sections in Filevine. You can see we have quite a few here. I've also seen clients build out a sections that's just called like forms or outlaw or FVDA or something like that. And they just have everything kind of tied to that section, which is also an option as well. So it kind of just depends on what you want to do for your workflow. I always think it's kind of nice to have the widget in whatever section you're going to be generating that document out of. Just before you generate that document, you can kind of verify if you were for some reason working out of the insurance section that all those fields that need to be pulled into the document have been filled out. Because obviously if there's no data filled into Filevine, you're not going to pull in any data into your document, right? So then you're going to have to go back and either edit this document, or it might just be nice to make sure you have it in Filevine the first go around. Because it's also nice to make sure you just have all that information filled in, because I'm sure you're reporting on it. You're generating other things, maybe fusions in this case, or different things, or just getting some KPIs. So it's always good to have that filled in. And then it's just kind of ease of use that once you hit generate, all that information is going to pull in and you don't have to worry about it too much. So long story short here is that this section name is just basically where you're going to put that widget. So I'm going to go ahead and just connect this back to medicals, because this is our medical authorization that we set up. Now, something you will see here is the proofing ID. And let me just go ahead and pull up our Filevine here. The proofing ID is pretty cool because it's something you can add in. It's optional, but it actually allows you to pull in live Filevine data from a Filevine project. So you physically don't have to go into, I don't know, either a Filevine test project or something like that and generate tests to make sure your document's generating correctly. So I'm just going to click into one of these and kind of show you guys where you can find that proofing ID. So let's come up here. I've pulled up our Filevine sandbox so that we can find that proofing ID together. Basically, the proofing ID is just the project ID. So you can find that up here. It's going to be in the URL just right after project. We would come over here and select this. I have that number selected and copied. And now I'm going to go ahead and paste that over here in proofing ID. I'm going to hit create. You can see that it is syncing the connected fields. If everything goes well, it should say that, fields have loaded. and it will kind of show up teal. If it shows up anything else, sometimes it'll say like cannot load fields, and it typically displays that in red. That means that there's probably an issue with your connection. And typically, Filevine is setting this up and linking your Filevine, to your Outlaw using an API key. And for some reason, if that's not working, you're not able to even connect to anything, it's likely an API issue. You can either reach out to Filevine directly, your AM, or if you're working with us, we take care of that issue for you. So it's not a big deal. So, that's basically everything that we have filled in there. You can also see that now I put in this proofing ID. We're also getting meds and insurance. That's just because these are a couple of other collection sections that might be mentioned in here. And so you want to make sure we're pulling in, the correct collection section for meds or, insurance if we have it. But this is good enough for right now. You also don't have to input the proofing ID if you don't want to. But now you can see previously when we had, basically started this from existing, this all came over formatted, but these fields were grayed out. And like I said, that wasn't going to be pulling in any information from your Filevine. Now that we've actually gone through and connected this back to Filevine, you will see that these are all showing up teal. I can also click on them and we can have a few more options here. So I'm going to pause there in case there's any questions. I know sometimes it's hard to like chat into the Q&A if people are talking super fast. So I'm going to just pause there for a moment for you guys. Perfect. Okay. So like I was saying, now that these have pulled in, we actually have a few different options that are associated with the fields. So in case you don't know, FVDA, you can remote sync these data fields in a couple different ways. Some have more ways than others. There's typically 4 ways, but depending on what type of field it is in Filevine kind of restricts how much syncing we can do. We can see here, this is a field in our medical section, and it is a provider contact card. So this is physically a contact card in Filevine, and you can see I only have 2 options for how I want this to remote sync. The first one is the once remote sync, which basically populates the initial value from remote. So it's populating anything from Filevine just once, right? That one's, I would say, probably the most common, because typically when you're generating this, you want it to generate and you're going to be using that data. And then if anything's updated later, you might want to still keep this as a reference point that this was sent out with this data, and then you would then just regenerate the document. But it kind of depends on everybody's workflow. So that's why there's a couple of different options as well. The other option is that anytime this is updated, this would be the pull method, is that anytime Filevine is updated, those remote updates are going to sync to Outlaw. So say you ran this document, for some reason you had in a medical provider name, but it was actually incorrect. You went back and updated it on their collection section. If you had it set to pull, when you open this again, this is actually going to automatically update instead of having to rerun the document. So that's kind of the difference between those two. And it's nice that it kind of has this little helpful hint here that lets you know, instead of having to remember, exactly like what an admin collaborator is or something, in Filevine, this kind of spells it out a little bit nicer for you. And it's just something to remember that when it talks about remote, this is talking about Filevine. So I want to show you guys the other 2 options that you have. So I'm actually going to click here. Because this isn't a contact card, this is just a text box, we have a couple of different options that we can actually use when we're remote syncing. So one of those is the push method. Basically for this, it would sync to Outlaw and then push to Filevine. So basically what this means is if you came in and you generated your document here, dates of service was filled out in your Filevine, but when you were looking at it here, you're like, you know what, we forgot to fill in another date of service. You added it directly into this document. It would then push that date of service that wasn't added back to Filevine and add it to your Filevine. So you can keep like a running log. So this one's kind of nice because then it will just update for you. So that's a pretty nice feature. Obviously, you don't have to go back and do that. Now, bidirectional is can be a very useful one, and it can also be something you should use with caution. Just because it is bidirectional, it can result in a loss of data. So if you guys are familiar with automations at all or different things like that, you typically want to have a source of truth. And I'd say for the most part that you want your source of truth to obviously be Filevine, right? I think that's where you're operating out of the most. So I'd encourage you, if you do want to use bidirectional, just to make sure you're being really careful when you're updating things. Because for some reason, if this was set to bidirectional and I came in here like I did on the previous step for push and updated dates of service here, and I said, oh, we missed one, I could update it here. It's going to then push back to Filevine. And if for some reason I maybe deleted all the dates of service and said, oh, I don't need dates of service for this, one document that I'm sending out. If I went ahead up here and just deleted it or deleted all the dates out of there and then hit save, that's going to push back to Filevine. And that's actually then going to delete the fields out of your Filevine. So, that's something just to be careful of if you're going to be using the remote sync and bidirectional for those. I'd say I have a lot of my clients mostly using either the push or pull or once. I haven't seen a lot of folks using bidirectional, but there's definitely some use cases for it. Just something to be careful of when you're using it. Cool. All right, so we're moving right along here. So next I want to talk about a little bit about these conditionalities, because you guys are probably looking at these top 3 paragraphs and going, they look pretty much identical except for this bottom line, right? So these bottom lines of these 3 paragraphs are the only things that are different. This is something that is really great and useful about FVDA is the conditionalities. Previously, if you wanted to build a document and maybe have like if-then statements or different things like that, you're using merge codes. Not sure how many of you guys have built out anything with merge codes or fusions, but I don't know, personally, I think that there's like a lot of time and effort that goes into it. Sometimes it doesn't work correctly. Things are showing up when they shouldn't be. There's just a lot of formatting and I don't know, use associated with it. So I prefer this method because it kind of, slims it down and makes it a little bit easier to use. So we have this set up as a conditionality that's actually pulling from Filevine. We can see the codes at the bottom here, these kind of little orange highlights. And let me just zoom in too, in case my second monitor is kind of small for everyone. But you can see here that this is actually conditional on a field that's in your Filevine. We can also make it conditional on a field that's not in your Filevine. We can build out what's called an outlaw variable. Those are going to be purple variables that can either be filled in or have predetermined values that then, kind of filter out data. But basically what this one is saying is that in our meds section, because we see meds right here, there is a yes, no that says additional dates of service. So if we go back over here, I'm just going to take you into our meds so I can show you the front end, which might make a little bit more sense as well. But basically we have, this is the yes, no that I'm referencing in our conditional variable in outlaw. And it just says, are there additional dates of service? If it's selected yes, this paragraph back here is going to show up in my document. That's because it's basically alerting me that, we want to show all the dates of service. And to get dates of service, we have to hit this yes button, and then we can see everything shows up over here. So that's kind of what that one means. On this end over here as well, this one is actually conditional on a meds field that says, are they still treating? This is also back in our meds. This is right here. If they are still treating, this is going to show up and it's going to say, from the present dates of treatment to today. And then the last option is meds, are they still treating? No. And then it's going to pop up with the date that the treatment was completed. So that's kind of the nice part because, typically I've seen this, especially with clients that I've worked with, maybe not specifically for med authorization, but things like complaints. I think complaints, if you're working specifically in PI, right, you would have stuff for MVA accident, premise, anything else that's a kind of matter type that you're representing, but each complaint is going to be its own document. Now with FVDA, you can use this conditional logic and you can go from having, 5 complaint templates to one, where it's all combined and condensed into this. And these paragraphs are only going to show up when certain conditions are met. So I think that that's really beneficial. I know both Jasmine and I have done a lot of those transitions where, you know, previously you were having to keep up with, I don't know, 10 plus or more documents as far as docgens and generating them. And not just only having to look through that many documents in your template can be stressful, because sometimes you're like, this is a lot, I don't need to look at all of these. But also, you know, if you ever have to update information on them, you have to go into each individual one and update it, right? Maybe you currently aren't using a dynamic letterhead. You're going to have to click into each one of those and update your letterhead, right? So this kind of simplifies that. You can use conditional logic and basically build in all of the different templates that you would need, and then they're only going to show up when certain conditions are met. So
we've seen people use it for like gender is a really big one.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that currently built into your Filevine, you can use these conditional logics to have the paragraph show up dependent on your client's gender in the contact card, which is super nice. Because again, you don't have to necessarily have that language in your Filevine. You just have to have a way for us to pull, hey, if the client's gender is female, then this paragraph is going to show she throughout. And you can add more than one conditional value. So if you want it to show when, you know, additional dates of service is yes, and also when MVA is selected as your case type, you can do that. So it allows, again, for more dynamic options within one template.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jasmine. And just like what Jasmine was saying, you know, if you want to use it for gender, I think that's a big one. You can either opt to pull that gender in maybe from your contact card if you're using that. So I was going to kind of show you how to pull in some different fields in Filevine, and then also see how we can set up other like complex conditional variables, which is also what Jasmine was saying. You know, if you have like this conditional additional dates of service and you also want it to show up for a specific accident type, how you can kind of tie those two together. So let's talk about how we can actually insert a variable in Outlaw. So something that we should note before you even start inserting anything is obviously to make sure that you have this connected back to your Filevine. If you don't have this connected back to Filevine, you know, that's that step we did where we came over here and connected it using the connections. If you hit the bracket, typically nothing is going to show up if you don't have it connected, because there's no connected variables, which are going to be your FVDA variables that are actually fields in your Filevine. And you would still be able to basically insert an outlaw variable, which actually starts with this hashtag here, but you wouldn't be able to really insert anything else because that's kind of tied to Filevine. So when you're going to be inserting a variable, typically when you start off a new paragraph, it's going to be in the paragraph title. You can see if I hit the bracket in the paragraph title, nothing shows up. That is because you can't actually add a variable into a paragraph title. It needs to be in the body of the paragraph. And this is, I think, the most common thing that happens to people when they first start coding out their own FVDA documents is like, oh, I can't add in a variable. And it's probably because you're on the paragraph title line of that paragraph. So to get down to the body, when you're in a new paragraph, you would just hit enter again. And it would, or enter return, depending on, you know, your keyboard there, but you would basically just go down to the next layer in that paragraph. Now from there, you can see as soon as I hit the bracket, I have all these options to add in different variables. So I'd say the most common variables you're going to be adding in as FVDA clients are connected variables. So to either add that in, you can either do your bracket and then come down here and click on connected. You can see that then that started opening up all the different fields that are associated with your Filevine. And they do go in alphabetical order. So like, you know, you can see here, case summary is first. And as we scroll through down here, we get into damages and all of that. But instead of having to scroll through, because I'm sure everybody has a lot of fields in their Filevine, we don't want to have to scroll. We can actually also just do a plus sign FV and then do an underscore. And then from here, you can actually start typing a search field or a common phrase that you're trying the field you're trying to pull up. So if I'm trying to pull in like accident type, like we mentioned before, you notice I just started typing accident, and the first one that came up is this one that I do want to pull in. Now you can see here that this is in our intake. So whatever's after this underscore here is going to be the section name. And then the last underscore is going to be the field selector. Now, not to get too much into the woods, but there is a difference between a field selector and a field name in Filevine. Typically, the field name is something that you're going to see in the front end. Like if you actually clicked into intake here, we'll just click over there to illustrate this a little bit better. If we clicked into there, and we can see now that incident type is showing. That is the field that I'm currently trying to pull in. However, you can see that this is actually called on the back end, which is in Customs Editor, accident type. So you can see that there's just a little bit of a name mismatch, but that's not a big deal just because Outlaw does pull in both. So I can reference it and say, okay, this is the field I want. It is in the intake section, and it's called incident type on the front end, which, if I wanted to go and check, I can look here. Here's the incident type. And on the back end, if I'm looking for it, it's going to be called accident type. So I know sometimes there's a mismatch, especially if you've made maybe optimization, there are different things to your template. Maybe the field selector didn't get changed, but it's not a big deal. It will still work even if they're mismatched on your FVDA template. So now that I have found the field that I want to pull in, I would simply just click on that field, and you can see it has now been inserted. So the great thing now about this field is I can either have it populate with data, on my template. Maybe I wanted to say, my client was involved in, and list out the specific accident type that they were involved in, or incident type, or I can also use it as another conditional variable. So like Jasmine mentioned up here, maybe I want to only see this one paragraph for when meds, additional dates of service is yes, and the accident type is NVA. So let's come in here, and I've added this in now for our accident type. So we'll come down here into add condition, and we do just have to find the incident type here, which is this field. We would select that, and we'll say we only want to see this for MVA. Now, right now, I have this just set on the one paragraph. If I wanted to come up here and add this conditional variable to this paragraph, I would just have to obviously come in here and select that. Now, something you do want to note is that once you have two conditionals on a paragraph is that you might want to also opt to use the complex conditions, because right now, if I have it like it is, it's basically saying intake accident needs to be motor vehicle, and basically this date of service needs to be filled out as yes, or this paragraph isn't going to show up. Most of the time that's fine. A lot of the times we do actually want to tell it that this is, we want incident intake and this to show up, or this to show up, just depending on your needs. And sometimes it gets a little bit confusing at first when you're working on these, is if you need to actually add in this complex variable or if it's fine as is. So I would say this one's kind of a trial and error to figure out what you want. I would recommend definitely kind of generating this document and seeing how it pulls in, just because sometimes the first time using these complex conditions can be a little bit confusing. But basically now we do have this set up that says, when accident type is motor vehicle or dates of service, this paragraph is going to show up. So when either one of those, data inputs is met, this paragraph is going to show up. Now, maybe I decide I don't need both of these conditional variables. At any time if you want to remove a conditional variable from a paragraph, you can always come over here and you can hit this trash can over here on the right side. That's going to remove one of your conditional variables. Now, something to note here, we did pull in this accident type here, but maybe I don't actually want the accident type to show up on my document when I generate it. I just wanted to use it as like a filter to basically decide what I want on my document. So if that's the case, once you have it filled in, you have the intake accident type here, you can actually come in here and delete that. So I'm no longer going to have that data point that would say like MVA accident here. This is now just going to be a blank paragraph. However, it would show up if the accident type in my intake is selected for MVA. So maybe if I wanted to say something in here like, like meds for MVA accident, this is only related to that one incident. Now I have this paragraph that's going to show up when this condition down here is met, but you don't actually have to keep that, incident type or accident type variable listed on your document there. I'm going to pause there and see if anybody has any questions on conditionalities or setting up complex conditionalities, how to pull in a field. Cool. All right. Well, we can keep moving right along there. I think the next one I wanted to talk about is how to actually pull in basically project fields. So it's different things like, maybe your project client here, any information associated with them in their contact card. We could also talk about how to pull in different things like, the project ID or the case number, some of the different things like that. I was looking in here to see if we had any of those vitals set up, but it doesn't look like it, but that's fine. But how to basically pull in, our project ID number up here and the project incident date, which, some folks might be using just a regular date field that is named incident date. But if you're using the incident date field that is an actual field type in Filevine, and the incident date type, incident date field in Filevine actually mirrors from one section to the next. So you can actually, basically not have to enter data multiple times if you insert this incident date field somewhere. So that's a pretty cool feature. And if you're using that, I can show you how to pull it in your Filevine and FVDA. So let's go ahead over here. If we want to pull in anything that has to do with our project client or anything like that, or just our project in general, instead of typing like incident date, well, it would help if I could spell. But if we start typing incident date, you can see I'm just getting some hits, but I'm not really getting that incident date field that I had in my intake. So what we want to do, instead of searching for a specific field name, we want to type in project. You can see when I type in project, I get a whole new list of fields that I didn't previously see before. And now we can see, we can insert our project ID number, we can insert our project client. If we scroll all the way down, we can insert that project incident date that I showed you guys that's currently in our intake in our sandbox. So there's a lot of different options from here that you can insert that if you just started to search like first primary, it's not going to come up, which can make it a little confusing sometimes. So this is definitely one of my big kind of takeaways for people, especially if they're looking for, specific project data, is always start with this project first. And then you can, kind of search from there if you're looking for like incident or something like that. But if you just type it in regularly like we did for a normal field, it's not going to show up. So like I was saying, if you want to insert the project incident date, come down here. Because it is a date field, it's going to ask you to basically confirm one other piece of data here, and it's how you're going to want to see that date. So you have a couple of preset options. This is very similar to like date fields and formatting that you would see in DocGens, right? You can do like date long, you can do just the month, you can do the day. So you have all that same capability here. You would just have to select it kind of from this drop down. I'd say obviously the standard prose is the default, but verbose prose also is good. And then if you just want to isolate maybe like years or dates, you can always select those. Unformatted, I would not recommend. Besides the fact that it is unformatted, it is just going to be however it is entered in your Filevine. And sometimes it spits out just really bizarre configurations of dates. And I would loosely call them dates. I'm not really sure what's going on. I would definitely recommend picking one of these ones that's actually format versus unformatted. I also don't know when you would pick an unformatted date, but it's an option. So, so you would basically just confirm one of those options, and then it has been inserted. Similar to that effect is inserting the project client. Now, the project client is what's going to be pulling from your Filevine. That's that contact card right up here. I lost my mouse. Up here on the top left. It would be able to pull in any of this information from any of these, any of these different Contact areas. Sorry, Jasmine, I saw you unmuted.
No, I was going to say fields.
Thanks. Sometimes you just like lose your train of thought. So yeah, so basically you'd be able to pull in any of this information. The project client, to insert it, because it is a contact card, you would just need to come in here and you would need to select that you want to pull in the project client. As soon as you click on that, this is basically opening up the contact card, and you then have to select which field you want to pull in. So, you know, from here we can search, maybe you want to pull in their address. We can start typing in address and that will show up. We could also pull in maybe their gender here. Like we mentioned before, this is a great way to use a conditional variable and kind of filter off of that. But, you know, basically whatever field you're looking for in their contact card, you can kind of just search that and then you would select it to pull it in. So let's just go ahead. Maybe we'll pull in their social security number over here. So we'll just search that. Here's the project social security number, and then you would be able to pull it in. So kind of when you do either dates, numbers, whether it's currency or just a regular number, or a contact card, you're going to have to basically do 2 steps to enter it. You're going to select your field, and then it's going to ask you to confirm some additional formatting. And when it's a contact card, it's going to ask you what specifically in the contact card you're looking to pull out. Everything else, you know, specifically when it's just like, I don't know, a text box or drop down or different things like that, you just literally search for whatever you want. I don't know if this is, there's a list. You would just search for what you want and just click on the field and hit enter, and you wouldn't have to confirm any other data there. So that's kind of how you can insert the different Filevine connected fields. And if you ever want to see an overview, because, you know, some documents, this one's pretty short, but some of them can be, you know, pages long. And instead of having to scroll through and confirm that you have all of the different fields that you want to pull in, or if you just want to see, you know, the fields you've pulled in thus far, you can actually go over to Elements. Elements is a pretty cool feature. This is basically just giving you an overview of all the different variables that you have on your template. And so for this instance, if I wanted to see all the different ones that I have that are connected variables, I'd click on connected, and I can scroll through and see which ones are being used on my template. Now you can probably see the ones over here that have a little trash can. If they have a trash can next to them, it means they're currently not in use in my template, and I can actually delete them because there's no data pulling in. They're not being used for a conditional variable. So they're just kind of unused, and they might have been something that when I was previously building out this document was in use, but since then I've changed my mind, changed the formatting, changed any number of things, and I can go ahead and delete it. So if you want to delete it, just similar to how we deleted the conditional variables, you can hover over the trash can here, and it is deleted. So you can delete them. You can also leave them on here. It doesn't slow anything down or disrupt anything. This isn't something that you're going to see on the document itself, but it's just, you know, nice if you want to do any like kind of housekeeping and organization over here. So you can obviously choose between all these different variables. You can see the different variables using the same method about what's being shown on there. Cool. I think one of the new ones too that we should talk about is the connected variable. This one came out, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and they actually pushed out some new updates about how you can pull in information. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that is really nice. I know Filevine and Outlaw, they're looking to kind of make FVDA the new way to generate settlement fusions and disbursements and different things like that. So hopefully they will get a few more tools implemented so that you can really build those out and stop having to rely on like fusions for those type of things. So let's go ahead and chat about that. So similar to how we start all of our variables off is when you actually have to put in the bracket. So you can come in here and you can click on the calculated variable, or to insert any calculated variable, you just do that percentage sign. Now, this is going to operate very similar to an outlaw variable where you can literally name it whatever you want. You can type it in, you cap it off with a bracket at the end, and that's now your variable name. But, you know, I think it's always nice to give these a name that makes sense. So, you know, maybe we wanted to calculate attorney fees. So I would type out attorney fees, hit that bracket at the end. This now becomes a calculated variable. Now, the calculated variables kind of work in 2 parts. I have now made my variable, which is part 1, and part 2 is that I actually need to add a formula to it. You can see once I clicked back on it, it's glowing red. That basically means I haven't finished setting it up all the way because I haven't actually inserted a formula yet. So let's go ahead and pull in a couple more fields here. Maybe we have one that's an attorney field or something. I'm trying to think where things are in here, but we can also just pull an amount. Look, that looks good. So we're going to pull in this attorney field to give a reference point. And then let's say that, we're going to multiply this times like 40%. That's what we're going to be taking or something like that. So you can either reference a couple different ways to do the calculated fields here is that you can either reference obviously from your Filevine, maybe you have some amounts or some fees or numbers or currency items there that you're like, I want to pull in this, but then also I have some outlaw variables, or I know I just need to multiply this times 40%, or I'm trying to think. I recently built out some calculated variables for a client who had an attorney field in there, but then whenever they do their mail service, they charge an additional $20 for this fee. So then it's basically their attorney fees plus $20 equals our calculated fees, right? So that's like something you can do as well. You wouldn't have to make if we did it like that, you wouldn't have to make a variable for that $20 extra just because that's going to be constant. But if it's something that you're like, hey, sometimes it's $20, sometimes it's $50, you could make that an outlaw variable that you fill in, and that factors into the formula to produce, your end value. So if I came back into our calculated fields here and I wanted to set up one, I'm going to reference that settlement 1 attorney fees. So I'm just going to say, I would just start kind of typing this in. You can see this is now pulling up. There we go. Attorney fees. And then I'm going to say plus, and I'm going to use that example of $20. So I can come in here and do $20 here. And I think it actually just wants me to do just without the number sign. So I can come in here and I can actually just add that in. When I hit update, this would automatically fill in, and you can see that this is now black here, which means that it is good to go. And I should be able to preview this as flow web. You can see this is currently only pulling in as $20 just because it's not pulling in. I don't think I have that attorney field for settlement actually filled in here. So that's all it has to work off of. But if we had that field pulled in, doesn't look like it, total attorney fees. So if we had that filled in, this would be a little bit better example, but we can also kind of recalculate that together and pull that in. Yeah, you can see here, that's that 0 field. So we're not actually pulling in anything yet. But you also don't have to pull in based on Filevine fields. You can also just make your own outlaw variable. So let's just call this amount. And I'm going to say, I'm going to default this to $50 just for this test. But, typically this is an outlaw variable. You would go through and fill this in, and that's then something that would factor into this equation. So let's say that this is going to be a currency. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to redo my equation. Oh, if it doesn't close on me, I'm going to backspace all of this. Perfect. We're going to hit update on that. We can come back over here and preview as, and now we can see that that is calculating out to $70. That one's pretty simple. I mean, you can do a little bit more complex ones, if you needed to. You can do obviously multiplication with a star. You can minus, you can do the backslash for divide. You can kind of do all different stuff. And you can also do similar kind of PIMDOS thing. I think right now exponents aren't supported, but you can do like parentheses around this. So calculate this first plus this other calculated amount equals something else. So you can do some pretty complex equations if you need to. Basically, the equations would be similar to the calculated fields that you can do in Filevine. So like, for instance, I know that this is a calculated field, kind of whatever you can do in Filevine, you're going to be able to now do in FVDA as well when you're setting up these variables. So that's kind of how you can do that. You can obviously pull in more than just two. I know I was just kind of pulling in two of these. You can also come in here and I could also pull in an outlaw amount or calculation. And I can also come in here and pull in that attorney fees that I was looking at before. We can pull in kind of both of those together. So it doesn't have to be like, all Filevine and all outlaw. It can be a mixture. You can also add in, the $20 like we were doing. So you can kind of add in, a lot of different stuff there to make it work. Perfect. Something else just on that note is that now they have released it that you can actually pull in fields from collection section tables. So in case you guys don't know, they did release the ability to total tables. So I'm just going to pull in a meds table here. And I'm just going to set it up really quick with just like a couple fields, but let's do that. And there should be the amount field somewhere around here.
So the cool thing about tables is it allows you to bring in information from any collection section, and you can choose how many of the actual items that you want in there. So if you have 12 medical providers, but you only want to see 3 in this table, you're able to kind of select the 3 that you want shown in there, and which columns you want shown as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, you can actually set up your meds tables now. So you can come in here, you can also customize this. You can say like total meds, you can kind of say whatever you want. But now we have the ability to pull in this total number. So technically be under here and add that into equations. So, especially I think we use this a lot with our demands AI clients, right? Because typically they're deciding which meds they want to reference and pull in. And then we get the total meds balance, which is obviously something we want to include in the demand. But then we normally go through and say, hey, based on all of these different factors, this is the demand amount, if you're not going for policy limits or something like that. But you can actually, instead of previously, we would have to take this number out, do some manual calculation on the side, right? And then have your final demand amount. But now you can actually say, hey, I want to reference the total meds from this table added into this equation with this other stuff. And now you're going to get your full on demand amount. So that's pretty cool. That's definitely one of the strides Filevine and Outlaw folks are taking so that they can start making settlement fusions and disbursements and things like that happen a little bit easier in FVDA, just because it hasn't really been super, I would say like not super supported yet. There's definitely a lot of the functionality that's there, but there's some reasons why people are still continuing to do fusions in Filevine. So hopefully this will kind of bridge that gap and then branch out into that area as well. So it's pretty cool. There's trying to think what else we would want to cover. I know we're pretty close on time, I think.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Anything that we didn't go over that you maybe had questions about? While you all think kind of questions, just wanted to let you all know that VineSkills does offer services to build out documents for you all. So if you're looking at FVDA and you maybe don't have it and you're like, this would be a really great addition, we can get you connected back with Filevine to get that service added for you. And then if you're like, hey, great, I know how to do a document, I just don't have the time, or this is too complicated and I'd rather have somebody else do it, again, we're able to work with you to build out your documents in FVDA, get you trained in a more formal setting and items like that. Again, for Filevine or anything Filevine related, VineSkills is kind of here to help and assist you. So definitely feel free to reach out. I'm going to put my email address and Jordan's email address in the chat just so that you all have it, so that if you do have questions after this, you can always feel free to reach out. And then we do offer free help every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I see a few familiar names here today, so great to see you all again. feel free to continue to join us. Again, we record these sessions, so if for some reason you're not able to make it one week, totally fine. You can always catch those recordings on our website. And I'll go ahead and include our website in the chat as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And I just wanted to touch on that as well. Just in case you came here today and maybe didn't get like a specific question answered, or maybe you're like, hey, I want to learn about, a topic that we didn't go too much in advance in. We also have a lot of great videos that are free on our website. So to find that after Jasmine, I saw she drops this in, so you can just navigate to vineskills.com. You can come over here to our learn, and you can go to Filevine training videos. Come over here and click on document assembly, because that's what we were talking about today. And you can kind of scroll through and see all the different ones we have. If you work with us as a client, we also have like a library of, I don't know, I think we're up to like 50 training videos now that we can actually drop directly into your Filevine in kind of like an admin section. Guess I could just show you because I have it right here, but that's also something that you kind of get if you opt into working with us, just kind of easy to find. And it also has all things Filevine as well. It's just not for FVDA. So you can actually come over here and you can see all the different ones that we have. So yeah, a lot of great videos. These are a little bit more bite-sized. You don't have to listen to me talk at you for 50 minutes. These are a little bit smaller and things like that. And they actually kind of do a deeper dive on like, specific items, like how to edit documents or generate templates or different things like that. So yeah, I think that's it. I'm not really seeing any questions. So
perfect. Well, thanks so much, Jordan. Again, if you all have questions, feel free to reach out to us via email. It was a pleasure chatting with you all today, and hopefully you'll have a great rest of your week.
all right, bye.
Bye-bye.